My name is Erin Cain-Hodge, and right now I work for the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. So I would say my field is working for the government. Prior to this, I was an employee of the Department of State, and I worked at the Passport Office, adjudicating citizenship claims, verifying identity of people, using databases to verify different information, as well as adjudicating derivative citizenship claims, which are like the children of US citizens. I've always really been driven to service work. And I think that can look in a lot of different ways. Like it can be, working at like a homeless shelter. It can be being a social worker. But I really believe that working for the government is also another form of service. Literally, I do feel like my job is to serve the public. That's just kind of what drew me. I've always loved that. I think to work in service, and especially to work in the government, you need a lot of patience. Young change makers might have like all of this passion. It definitely can get frustrating because you want to be like, no, like this is a problem. We have to solve it today. And it absolutely might be a very large problem, but unfortunately, like that's just not the way that government works. And so if you have those expectations of like change happening immediately, you're just going to get burnt out. And so I think the type of person who does a good job working for the government is someone who understands the significance of small victories and kind of sees the larger picture and just has patience that change specifically in government does take a long time. I also think it's really important to be a people person and be very flexible. There's so much diversity when you're working in the government, and you really have to be conscious that like your position title might be the same, but you might have a completely different background and a different way of doing things, a different perspective. And it's still really important to be able to work with that person to get the job done and to serve the public, because that's your responsibility. I graduated from the U of A in 2014 with a bachelor's degree in gender and women's studies. Really what that taught me is to look at systems, the system of government or the system of healthcare or our education system, anything you can think of, to look at that with a critical lens and to think, who's missing? Who does this put a greater burden on? Who does maybe this benefit? And to just look at how all of those systems affect different groups of people, or maybe they help support different people, just all kind of things. And you're trying to really analyze those systems. And so I really appreciate that background because my job is to look at government systems. And I'm always the one in the meeting, thinking very critically about like, who does this leave out? How does this impact tribal nations differently? How does this, what if someone doesn't have a car to access this food bank? How are we serving them? What happens in a disaster? What about the unhoused population? They also need food, and our job is to also serve them. They are Americans. So to me, that's very directly tied to what I do. And I think that the name of the degree can cause some confusion, but I really think that it's helpful for everyone to be able to look at systems critically. So I'm very happy, that I have that educational background. So I really didn't think I would end up in government. I really saw myself being in the nonprofit sector, and I felt like government was in some ways like untouchable, like that I needed to have, 20 years of experience, and I needed to have, several advanced degrees, and sort of like that the bar was too high for me to reach. And I'm really very grateful to learn that it is absolutely not, that it does take skill. You do have to be educated. You have to, be confident in yourself. You do have to meet qualifications, but they are absolutely not unreachable. You don't have to be one in a million to do the work, which is what I truly thought when I had just graduated. So I kind of wish that someone had shaken me out of that bubble a little bit. So I would tell other students and just remind them that it's absolutely not unreachable. I think it's really important so different levels of government do have different points of entry. I've worked previously for the state of Arizona. My entry into that was very different than my entry to the federal government. So I would first try to really think about your goal because the path is not the same. If you're in Tucson, really just check websites, check City of Tucson, check Pima County websites, check State of Arizona. They're hiring all the time, really all the time. And it really just takes a Google search and to put in the in the effort and at least, try and get your name out there as a starting point. The federal government is a little bit more complicated because they really do a very, very strict job to make sure that they're hiring people based on merit and not based on contacts or your social standing. So you do have to belong to certain groups such as veterans, returned Peace Corps volunteers. There's a program for current students. There's a path for recent graduates, but you do have to meet those kinds of qualifications, generally speaking, in order to give yourself a better chance of getting those federal jobs. But really, it's just trying. The USA government website, usajobs.gov, can be very complicated. And so I also think it's important to ask for help. It took me, I'm completely honest when I say I applied for 60 jobs before I got my job because it is complicated. And so I wouldn't beat yourself up about it if you're not, getting those calls. A lot of hiring is done through the computers. And so it takes a while to learn that system and to learn what kind of keywords you need to use, in order to get your application in front of the person it needs to be. So I would say, again, patience is really required in that, and asking for help, like not being afraid, to just say like, hey, I'm having a hard time. How do I make a federal resume? Because it is different. So it's not you, it is genuinely different. And it takes time to learn. I mean, I was a current federal employee and it took me 60 applications, to get a different federal position. I'm a pretty shy and reserved person, and I've grown a lot since college. I was much more that way, when I was 20 than I am at 30. I would see some sort of panel, I would think, oh, like that's too prestigious for me, or that's, like I'm not good enough for that. And now looking back on it, I think to myself, what was I thinking? Of course I was good enough for that. I was exactly the type of person that should have been at that, event or at that panel or that, professional organization, but I just didn't, realize it at the time. So I would say try to build your inner confidence to try new things and put yourself out there more, because you truly, genuinely have no idea who you're going to meet. I think generally people do want to help other people. And that's something, I would be really nervous reaching out to someone, or oh, I can't just cold email that person, like what am, I can't do that. My mom would always say like, no, Erin, like people want to help people. No one is going to say, how dare they ask for professional, assistance, or how dare they ask for my opinion. I have never met anyone like that. I applied for law school. Actually, I'm going to start a part-time law school in September. I was so nervous asking for professional recommendations, because I thought to myself like, oh no, I'm so terrible. I haven't, been in touch with my professors. They're, going to tell me to go away. That was absolutely not the case. And they were more than happy to write me letters. They were thrilled for me and, insisted if I needed anything else to please let them know. And, they wished me all the success and in my education endeavors. Just really be confident and have faith that people want to help you.